Welcome back to the Epoch podcast. My name is Ben Wartsky, and alongside me is my co-host, Diego Bryan.
Hello, hello.
And with us today, we have a designer slash rocketeer slash environmental scientist slash tree lover slash a lot of things. He's a man of many talents.
And Captain America.
And he really likes Captain America, I guess. And his name is Joseph Taylor.
Hello, how's it going?
And so Joseph and I work together for university housing, but today we have taken him away from our job and convinced him to come on this podcast with us. So thank you for coming on.
Thank you for having me.
So I think first we're going to start with one of the things that Diego was curious about before the podcast, and that would be rockets. Joseph is a member of the NC State Rocketry Club, and you guys just finished, the season just finished, right?
Yeah, actually, so we do an annual competition with NASA. It's the NASA Centennial Challenge, or their student launch initiative. And so each year, high school, middle school, and colleges compete on a national level. They create a design based off of NASA's challenge and work the entire year building a rocket system. And then at the end of the year in April, we take it down to Huntsville, Alabama at their NASA Marshall Space Flight Center and launch our rockets.
How big are these rockets that you're launching?
So they vary in size depending on the team's design and their budget. Our subscale this year for our rocket, we built a small prototype first. Our subscale was about 7 feet tall this year.
Oh my God.
And our final design, our full scale, was I think 12 or 11 feet tall.
Jeez.
And it was designed to go 5,280 feet or a mile high. We actually overshot and got disqualified from the altitude competition. One of the parts of the competition is to go exactly a mile high. We actually overshot and got 5,800 feet, and so we got disqualified.
It's a little high.
Yeah.
Do they have like certain parameters, like you can go mile, but you can go plus or minus 2 feet,
Yeah,
or is it like
so,
exactly?
Yeah, if you get a mile high, you obviously get like full points. If you go over, they take off 2 points for each foot that you go over, and if you go under, they take off 1 point. Notre Dame Rocketry, their team got the closest ever with, I think they were like 20 feet off or something from.
Wow.
That's pretty crazy.
Yeah, so they got pretty close.
Is it a matter of luck when it gets to that point? Like
a lot of times, yes, it depends on like
environmental factors?
Yeah, it depends a lot on the environmental factors, how windy it is, all kinds of stuff like that. And then also it depends on how much time you want to put into fine-tuning the weight to get it exactly to a mile high,
Right.
which can get expensive to launch it over and over and over again and add and subtract weight.
Well, but there's not just that competition though. There's also like style point. There's like best. What was that thing that you're upset about? You're telling me you're upset about one of the competitions.
Yeah. So one of the things that the teams vote on each other's rockets is the best looking rocket award. And so my aesthetic design team, we poured our heart and soul into it. we spent around $300 or $400 and about 20 man hours working on this, painting it, ordering and designing decals. We did it all from scratch, all by hand. And the team that ended up winning just took their rocket to a machine shop or an auto body shop and had them do it for them.
What?
Which it looked really good, but it sucked for us.
So they actually got professionals to do this. Holy crap.
Yeah.
No, it's like a big deal.
How does it work, like shipping a rocket that size to the location? While I would love to drive or fly to Alabama, because it's a 10-hour drive, we can't really do that with a rocket.
What do you mean? They don't let you have rockets on planes?
Not exactly. A lot of the things inside the rocket are designed to explode. So
really? Would have never thought.
I'm pretty sure we would get kicked off of United Airlines for that. So yeah, we had to drive. Actually, one year the competition was in the Salt Flats out in Utah, which is a 40-hour drive from here. And that year, our rocket actually exploded. So the team drove all the way out there and then had their rocket blow up.
How often does it happen that teams' rockets explode?
Usually at the competition in Alabama, there's about 40 teams launching, and usually there's about 1 or 2 rockets that explode, and usually that's due to a motor failure, and the motor is made by another company, and it's not usually the team's fault. Other times, the rocket may the parachute may not deploy correctly, or the fins might rip off or something, and which would cause the rocket to disintegrate or crash in some other form, but not necessarily explode. That's usually the failure that you typically see.
It's just like, it's like such a cool, like, I feel like not many people know about the Rocketry Club. I feel like I don't know how many people like have experienced it, or like have been to one of these competitions. I feel like it's very, very few people, but like, I mean, from how you describe it and from the videos that I've seen of it, like you have like, you attach GoPros to your rocket sometimes, and I've seen videos of that, and they just look so cool that you've designed this like thing. Like the closest thing to that I've designed is like a paper airplane, and you can't attach a GoPro to a paper airplane. It just doesn't work as well.
When the season starts, like how much money are you given as a team?
The NC State Engineering Council gives us about $2,000, and then we get another $2,000 from a NASA stipend, and then we have other sponsors. Like we have a company that gives us just parts, and then there's also the North Carolina Space Grant. I'm not entirely sure on the numbers of how much they give us, but we get money from them as well. And usually our rocket ranges from the whole design process from start to finish, including like building the subscale and the full scale. It usually costs about $8,000 to $10,000.
It's crazy. So like how much? I'm assuming money does make a difference in the rocketry. Like
Absolutely.
if your school gets more funds, then you can buy better parts, which makes it go faster, higher, whatever it needs to be.
You can take it to a shop and have them do it for you. Yeah, you can do more test flights. You can build it out of stronger materials. We use fiberglass, which is one of the stronger things that you can use aside from like going to titanium or something like that.
Right.
Other teams will just like with a smaller budget might use cardboard or something like that.
Really? Cardboard.
If you do it right, it'll work, but not for the size rockets that we do. They usually will do something smaller.
So there's no size
because
limit
like
to it?
the rocket kits you get, those are cardboard like tubes. And so that makes sense. I don't know why I was so surprised by that.
Going back to the size limit, we at NC State are actually responsible for the size limit because one year we built a rocket, or actually it was the first year that we competed, we built a rocket that was 15 feet high and it weighed 100 pounds. And it needed 2 cars to be transported. So they were like, we're not doing that ever again. So they set a cap on the one that
just because NC State.
Yeah, I think it's around like 12 feet or something.
So coming to state, did you know about the Rocketry Club, or is this a club that you found just like by happenstance? Or
I found out about it this summer before I came, and I had recently become really interested in rocketry through a video game called Kerbal Space Program, where you design these sort of like rockets, and they're very prone to exploding and all kinds of stuff. And I sent the club an email, and I was like, hey, I don't know anything about rockets except for this game that I play. And they're like, that's all you need.
So then after that, then you got involved in it, and now you do like all the social media for them. You take pictures for them. You do hopefully to be reelected, or were you reelected?
Yes, I was reelected as the social media
congratulations.
manager.
So any tweets or complaints about social media, direct them to Joseph. You now know who's responsible.
Yeah. It's actually really cool. NASA will like my tweets and tweet at me and stuff, which is really cool.
So have you made any connections with the NASA? Like, do you know like specific people?
Yeah.
Like now?
So we actually have somebody who graduated from NC State who works on, I believe they work on the avionics software for the Space Launch System, which is NASA's next generation rocket, which actually just got delayed till 2019, but it's not his fault.
This is only this man's fault. He's completely responsible for it.
Yeah. He works in the NASA Marshall Space Flight Center in Alabama, and his name is Darius.
Oh, well, shout out to Darius. That's cool.
That's awesome. I'm like so amazed right now. We have rockets that are 12 feet high here.
And you're sitting in front of a man who built them and painted it, right? Didn't you mostly paint it by yourself? Maybe not by yourself, but I know you did a lot of work on it.
Yeah, this year was a team of 3 people who consistently worked on it. We had one guy who had more experience like picking out paints. We chose to go with like the more high quality like automobile paint this time. And actually one of the paints that we bought, we didn't know it at the time, but it was discontinued, and we bought the last one.
Oh,
and
my goodness.
We ran out because our rocket's so big, we ran out of paint and we needed to do another coat. And we went back to the store and they were like, we don't have any more. And so we went like store to store. And finally, after like 2 hours of looking, one guy was like, I think we have one in the back. And he came back with this can that was like all beat up and like there was no cap on it. And he was like, yeah, it fell off the shelf and got kicked around for a while, but this is the last one. So here you go. So yeah, we had a guy who picked out the paint, and then I did most of the like masking, and I did the design on a computer first and modeled it. And then, so I masked it with tape and prepared it to paint, and then we had somebody go and actually take it to the paint shop and do the painting.
What's the reusability of these rockets, like from year to year? Like, do you use the same body? Or?
They are, so part of the competition is the rocket has to be reusable. After its flight, it has to be within a reasonable amount of time. You have to be able to relaunch it again that same day. And if you can't do that, then you get disqualified. And we actually had a problem with that earlier in the year. Our parachute didn't deploy properly, and one of the sections fell. It was about a 3-foot section, and it fell 2,000 feet without a parachute.
Oh, no.
And for the most part, it was okay, but one of the fins tore off, and so that gets into the reusability, and that was not something we could fly again that day. So right. Luckily, that didn't happen at the official competition.
So how many practice events do you have leading up to the competition? Like, I guess, how long is the season for rockets?
So usually we work on the design. We start working on the design as soon as NASA releases the challenge, which is usually in June or July. Sometimes they drop the ball a little bit and it's in like August or September, but usually June or July. And then we get started on the design, and we have to have them approve it first. So we have a video conference with them.
Right.
And we actually, one time during a video conference, one of the guys accidentally hit the end call button. He hung up on NASA. So we design the rocket in the fall, and then we usually have the subscale prototype, which is usually about 75% the full-scale size, done by October or November. And we'll launch that, and if that goes well, then NASA gives us the approval to build and launch the full scale, and usually that's done by February. And then after that, it's like fine tuning and getting code done right and all kinds of stuff.
So how difficult is it in difference between designing the subscale and the full scale? Like, once you design the subscale, is it much easier to design the full scale?
Well, the subscale is usually a very like jury rigged, and like it's not very well put together compared to what the full scale is. A more refined version.
Right.
Subscale may have like random holes drilled in it all over the place and stuff where somebody wasn't paying attention and
just drilled a hole in the rocket.
Yeah, like, oh crap, I wasn't supposed to do that. But yeah, then the full scale is a much more refined version, and the full scale is also bigger, so we actually have room to fit all of the electronics and stuff. Usually with the subscale, we won't put the electronics in because we don't really need to build a smaller version of those to test them because
you know that they work.
Yeah, for the most part.
How does the challenge differ from year to year? Also, I was wondering about that.
So usually they keep, in my experience at least, they keep the same challenge for 2 years and then they switch it up. So my freshman year, it was called the Mars Ascent Vehicle Challenge, which was one of their more complicated challenges, where you had to not only design a rocket, but you had to design a system that could be placed on Mars with the rocket, and the system would collect a soil sample, put it in the rocket, and then send the rocket into space with the intent of sending the sample back home to Earth.
Oh my goodness.
That sounds complicated to you? I could do that right now.
So the first year that challenge was, that was the challenge. Nobody knew what they were doing. And, we had these giant, like 1,000-pound, like contraptions that were ridiculous, and our team's like mess of a design actually ended up winning the $25,000 grand prize.
Oh, that's awesome!
Really sweet.
Does that go back to the university, or?
It actually
Joseph actually pocketed that.
Yeah, I pocketed it. No, I'm just kidding. So all of that money goes back to, and I could be wrong about this, but most of it goes back to the club.
Okay.
And just getting supplies for us. We used it to buy some new lab computers and some new parts for our next year's rocket. And so next year the challenge, that was my first year. The next year,
wow, so you had like a really high standard.
Yeah,
you guys won the whole competition. That's really cool.
It was big shoes to fill, and we let them down. So the challenge was the same, and we assumed that since everybody was so bad the first year that we didn't have to improve that much. So we just took our design from last year and like really refined it, and we made it look a lot cooler, and made it a little bit smaller, but it didn't necessarily like do anything more efficiently or anything. So while everything worked and did what it was supposed to do and would have won the challenge the year before, the other teams, which had they stole a lot of our design, but they did some cool stuff, and so I think it was Cornell University ended up winning the.
But it was the same like Mars lander.
Yeah.
So next year is going to be a completely different challenge.
Yeah. So that was last year's challenge, and then this year's challenge was they gave us 3 options. It was a fragile payload where they gave us like, I think it was like a clay object or something, and we had to fly that and recover it intact without it being broken in any way. There was also a vertical lander where you had to send a payload in your rocket that would separate from your rocket at the highest point in the flight and descend on its own and land vertically on the ground. I don't know if anybody's worked for that. And
that's a tough one.
And then
I just don't know how you do any of these. Like all of these, I'm like, my mind just does not work on how I would even begin to do this project.
And then the other one was ground target detection. So that you, in your payload that comes out of the rocket at the highest point in flight, you had to detect these tarps that NASA had put out on the ground, and like the computer had to do it all on its own. And yeah.
Does it just have to recognize them or like shoot a projectile at them?
It just has to recognize them.
Okay.
So we decided to, we were very cocky and said, we can do all of these, but we ended up just doing the vertical landing and the ground target detection. Unfortunately, neither of them worked. So we did recover our rocket successfully, so that worked, but we did not successfully land vertically or identify the targets on the ground, which was unfortunate.
How close were you to both of these objectives?
Not close.
Not close. not good.
Surprisingly, it's very difficult to get a large cylinder to land upright.
How would you control that though? I feel like that, as Diego was saying earlier, that has a lot to do with like the environment. Like if it's like super windy, maybe then
exactly,
it'll like just blow over on its own. Then there's nothing you can do.
You need like side thrusters or something like that.
Yeah, unfortunately, NASA said no to that.
Really? How would you?
That's why we're not in the club, Diego. So how does let's say we pick a rocket and we're a team. Then do we go into a room and we brainstorm like how we do this, or does someone like take charge and just say here's the idea that we're going with and let's build it?
So the club is partnered with one of the like senior level aerospace classes, and with that they have their capstone senior design project, and so the senior design team sort of leads our club in how the design is going to work. And I'm not a senior, so I didn't know their process this year for figuring out how exactly they were going to do it. When we build other rockets just for fun and stuff, we just sort of just sit down and talk about like, well, we could do it this way and this way and this way, and just sort of decide which one would be the most feasible.
So since being in the club, do you feel like you've learned a lot more about rockets? Like I'm assuming you've continued, as you said, like you build rockets outside of the club.
Yeah.
And so you feel like you've continued your education and like you've expanded, you like know
Yes,
more about rockets and know what they
absolutely,
do more now.
Yeah. My knowledge that I gained from Kerbal Space Program has expanded quite a bit. Yeah.
And now you're a master at the game.
Oh,
Like,
yeah.
That's what this was all for.
Yeah, he goes back to the game, he wins. So
I am kind of ashamed of my game. Like Steam tracks the amount of hours that
Right,
you
yeah.
in a game. It's like 1,200, which is
That's a 1,200 hours.
It's a lot.
Probably like top 3 in the world for playing this game. Like no one's gonna play this game for that long. You're out there like, I think I could actually build this rocket in real life.
Yeah, it's a fun game. 10 out of 10 would recommend.
It's 10 out of 10. And so we've also talked about some similar to building rockets in real life. Like you could do models, But another thing you can do, which I know I used to have, or I still have some of these. I know you have more than I do, which would be Legos. And I know I sent you the other day a picture. They're coming out. They're doing like NASA's teaming with Lego or something like that, and they're like designing like Lego rockets.
Yeah, they're doing the Apollo Saturn V, which is the moon rocket in Lego, and I believe it was $120.
Something like that.
Is it just a model of this thing, or will it actually?
Yeah, if it launched, then Lego's doing something crazy.
That would be pretty cool if you could launch it, but I don't think so.
So Joseph was telling me that he has quite the Lego collection. I believe, if I'm remembering correctly.
On my first day here at NC State, when I first moved in freshman year, my mom actually hid a Lego space shuttle under my bed, and that was a lot of fun.
That's awesome. I don't know what the last Lego thing that I've followed directions for and I've built successfully is.
What's the biggest thing you've built with Legos, like piece-wise?
Probably the Lego Millennium Falcon from Star Wars.
Oh my goodness.
That thing was
I was
huge.
looking at that thing.
Yeah. And my brother, he when I was showing it to my dad after I just finished it, my brother, like, he knocked it off the counter and all over the floor.
I'm sure you're a little bit upset.
Yeah, just a little.
A tad upset.
It was a little rough.
Did you rebuild it or no?
Yeah, I did.
Oh my goodness!
I could not find one of the leg pieces, which just ruined the whole thing.
So it's like tilted. It's like 3 out of 4 legs are there. Oh no!
And then you just took it apart, and then that was the end of that.
Oh, that's unfortunate. What about you, Diego? Did you have a Lego collection?
I built a couple Star Wars things, but like none of them were like noteworthy. The only things I built were like, I wonder if they were called like Lego Creator or something. And it was like you could build buildings on a city block and like connect them. And so I built like 2 or 3 of those, and like they were like 2,000 pieces maybe, something like that. It took me like 8 hours, 2 days. And like by the end of it, my back was like, oh God. And I'm like 10 years old with back problems from this Lego set.
Like walking around like a cripple because of Legos. I think I built, this is not nearly as impressive as either of these two things. I think I built like Boba Fett or Jabba Fett's spaceship, the one that like flies like vertically. Like I think I built that thing. And I think I built an X-Wing. I think I built.
Oh, so you had like 3 pieces or something?
Yeah. You just put them together. It's actually just a puzzle. It just wasn't a Lego at all. I just took a picture of it. No, Legos were cool. Legos are still cool, and they're surprisingly expensive. Like I'm not sure why Lego is so expensive, but the brand name is just crazy. Like people will pay so much for these Legos. It's a good present, I guess.
There's so much you can do too. Like when I was like super into Legos, like you can go onto their website and like 3-dimensionally design some sort of Lego thing, and then like they'd ship it to you and with instructions.
I actually did that.
Did you really?
Yeah. What did you design?
It was just like a small like Star Wars style starship kind of thing.
That's awesome. Did you have to pay for it? I'm assuming you pay for the individual pieces or something.
It was kind of. You used to be able to design it as a set, and they would put it all together for you in a box and ship it to you, and you would just pay for it and at whatever price they decided. But now you have to buy. I don't know why they did away with that program, but now you have to buy each piece individually, which is ridiculous because each one is like 25 to 45 cents each, and it adds up.
No, I'm sure.
Really
I'm sure
quick.
that adds up crazily. Like 2,000 pieces. So that's an expensive Lego project.
Yeah.
Dang. I'm kind of sad now that that's. I spent like hours on that thing. I mean, I didn't have any money when I was a kid, so I just like spent hours like making projects.
Right.
But I guess then I turned to Minecraft, and it was all downhill.
Minecraft is like just Legos online. That's all that game is. Diego and I've spent way too long on Minecraft combined.
My friends and I in middle school, we had a Minecraft server that we all played on.
And we did too.
Yeah, except like much more recent than that. Not last week.
We played on the server for like 2 years, and we had like an online map where you could see like underground and stuff, and the entire underground of the whole map had been mined out like completely. That's
crazy.
From our strip mining and stuff.
Right.
It was bad.
Yeah, like we know people who like submitted projects they did in Minecraft to the design school, and then they got into the design school here from Minecraft.
Yeah, that's crazy that Minecraft allowed people to get into the design school here.
That's crazy. I'm in a architecture class, and some people designed their final project house, did the initial layout in Minecraft.
Really?
It's not even the worst idea. Like you can't do everything you could do with like a 3D model program. Or like I'm not sure what the main architecture program is, but I think Minecraft is not like.
It's really basic. You can't export things from it, but it's a good visualization.
It's pretty good, but they didn't realize that the blocks are like 3 by 3 feet.
Yeah, so they are.
The scale was a little bit off.
Right. Yeah. I could imagine. So speaking of design, I know that Joseph had a little bit of a different high school experience than most people because Joseph had. It sounds very intensive compared to my high school because I didn't have to get interviewed for my high school. They wouldn't turn me down.
Hashtag public school.
Yeah, so I went to Weaver Academy in Greensboro, which is a visual and performing arts high school. And so I was interested in the visual arts aspect. So what I had to do was I had to create a portfolio of 12 pieces, and I had to go and sort of audition where they sat us down in a room and put all this stuff out. There was like a cow's skull and some like fruit and a basket, and they were like, draw it.
Dang.
And then they like pulled us out one by one and interviewed us, went over our portfolio and stuff. I had to reschedule my audition date because my middle school was going on a field trip. So I interviewed just by myself with one other person, and they only gave us 15 minutes to do the drawing, the still life drawing, which was crazy because I had never drawn that fast before in my life. But
how many people make it?
I think my year 70 people applied and 16 got in.
Wow.
So it was rather competitive. It was a lot of fun, though. Yeah, it was a lot of fun. My mom actually didn't think that I was going to get in because I never did any I never had any like professional art teacher or anything before that, and like all of my drawings were just sort of like what I had learned on my own from that. And my art teacher at Weaver actually admitted later on before I graduated that I wasn't that good. When I auditioned, he just saw potential in me apparently.
That's awesome.
So where did like the art come from? Like what is your first, where did art like spawn is a weird word, but like where did the passion for it, or like what is your first art related memory?
Well, I've really always liked drawing. In kindergarten, we had this like sort of activity called it was like metal shapes, and you could trace them and make like patterns and stuff.
Okay.
And that's how you were supposed to do it. But I like to like use like the circle or the rectangle shape, and then I would create a dinosaur out of it. And for some reason, the teachers didn't like that because I wasn't using it properly. So what I would do is I would do what I was supposed to on one side of the paper, and then I'd flip it over while they weren't looking, and I draw dinosaurs. And then in elementary school, I had a friend who was really good at drawing, and my teacher really liked how good he was, so she would let him like teach a little class on how to draw, and I was jealous. So I was like, I want to be able to do that too. So I practiced a lot, and
just to keep up with your friends.
Yeah.
Are they better than you now?
They actually stopped after elementary or middle school.
So like you showed them
something different. Yeah,
you won.
I guess so. I don't think they care, but
they don't know that they're having a competition, but they lost. So that's up to them. Okay, and so then that was elementary school. Middle school, you took art classes in middle school, or like the ones you had, like the electives?
In middle school, we just had we didn't really pick what classes we took. It was just like you took art class, like everybody took basic art class. And my 8th grade year, we had a teacher who really pushed like the drawing and stuff and like still life, and he knew that I wanted to go to Weaver Academy, so he would give me like special assignments to like build my portfolio from that. And I actually did, I think, 2 of my portfolio pieces the night before my audition.
Oh man.
I had decided that some of my other pieces weren't good enough, so I redid them.
That's crazy.
But yeah, so then in high school, we started drawing stuff the first day. It was 3 hours of art classes every day for all 4 years. Wow. And then on top of that, your regular academic classes as well. And
so what were the hours of was it like normal hours?
It was a block schedule. So we started at 9 a.m. and got out at 4.
That's standard.
Yeah. It's just 2 hours later because ours started at 7. It got out at 2.
Wow. Dang.
Yeah, the struggle was real. But okay, so you had 3 hours of art classes every single day.
Mm-hmm.
Were they structured, or sometimes was it like free draw?
At the beginning, it was very, very structured. So they would set up something. They would give us like the first assignment we did was like drawing ropes. So they just gave us like a basket of ropes, and we just pulled like 5 or 6 ropes and like arranged them on the table, and then we drew them. And that was like our first project, and it was awful. It was so much work because you had to draw like each little strand inside the rope, and it took forever. So that was our first project, and we did several things like that, like birdhouses and all kinds of stuff. And all our drawings like all looked the same for about the first 2 years. And then after that, we started doing more abstract stuff like surrealism, and then let us explore different areas, whatever interested us. And I had discovered digital painting, and so which is like using a drawing tab, like a digital drawing tablet to draw on the computer instead of on paper, because it's a lot easier to fix your mistakes.
Right.
I tended to make a lot of those. So I sort of gravitated towards that. And by our senior year, the like senior capstone project was a 12-piece body of work where you had to create 12 pieces with a sort of central theme. And it was an advanced placement class, our college level class. So we submitted it to whoever grades, I don't remember, but and then if you did well enough, you could get college credit for it. And my theme was like space landscapes, so I would do like the surface of Mars and stuff. And I really liked lens flares, so I did a lot of those. And I did 12 pieces of those, drawing on the tablet on my computer.
This was your first digital tablet. What tablet did you have at this point?
I had the Wacom bamboo capture tablet. When I first started, I just used the school tablet. They had some generic one, I'm not sure. But then I ended up getting my own because I needed to work outside of class as well on it. It was a lot of work. One of the pieces I once again decided I didn't like it the day before it was due, and did another one.
It's crazy.
But yeah.
What are you working with now as far as?
Now I use the I just upgraded this last December to the Intuos Pro, which is also by Wacom, but it's a little bit larger, and it feels a little bit more professional. It's
still not the next upgrade is to like one of the what are they called?
The Cintiq tablets.
Cintiqs.
The Cintiq tablets have a screen built into the tablet. And so instead of looking at your computer screen and like drawing off, like with your hand off to the side, you can look directly at what you're drawing and draw right on it.
That's cool.
Those start at like $2,500, so it'll be a long time before I get one of those.
But so can you talk about some of the pieces you've done, like where you've done like people commissioned you, they just started like talking to you, like can you talk about maybe your first experience with that, like how you got into like the more quote unquote professional, like doing it for money?
Yeah, well, it's a kind of a funny story. So at Weaver, I had this crush on this girl, and so all I knew how to do was draw pictures. So I was like, I'm gonna draw a picture of her, and like we were friends, so I was like, she had this really cool picture that was her Facebook profile picture, and I was like, I would love to draw that. And she was all on board with it, so I drew this picture for her and gave it to her. And then it sort of backfired, and then all of her friends wanted pictures drawn. And so then I was doing like a drawing a week for each person, and which ended up sucking up a lot of my time. And I was just trying to make friends at that point, so I did it anyway. But that's sort of how I got into it. And then after a while of doing that, I realized I needed to start charging for it because it was just eating up a ton of my time. So by my sophomore year, I started doing like logos for people and T-shirts and stuff. And I started out making like $5-10 for stuff.
Right. You've upgraded a little since.
Yeah,
then.
a little bit. One of the last things I did in high school, my senior year, I made $300 for a logo that I did, which blew my mind because I was like, wow, maybe I should do this in college. Yeah, so and it's fun, and all you really need is a piece of paper and a pencil.
Right, and some sort of talent you need. It's not like I can just sit up there and do it. Like, and a lot of practice. Like, you've put in 4 years times 50, however many weeks of school you're in, times 3 hours a day.
I was thinking about that because don't you need like 10,000 hours to be considered an expert or a professional? So
have you hit that?
No, not even close. But
we did the math, and it's like the only thing we could have possibly done 10,000 hours on is like school, because we were forced to. And then like even then we got like 12,000 or something. Like we barely breached it after like
I'm a professional student.
That's true. Like by the end of your years, you should be a professional student. Now, what that means or what that allows you to do, I don't know. It doesn't. I don't know.
But have you seen your logos or anything anywhere?
Yeah,
after you.
I did one recently over winter break for a local church in Raleigh, and I saw it on their Facebook page, and I think they had some T-shirts done as well,
really?
Which was pretty cool. But where I see most of my work is I work for University Housing as a graphic designer, so all of my stuff, as soon as I submit it, I see it on the wall somewhere or something, which is pretty cool. It's very rewarding for sure.
One of Joseph's favorite projects that he's ever done, which I volunteered him for the other day, jokingly, was that they made him do a mural for one of the...
Oh, my gosh.
I don't even know what it was for. What was it for? It was before I got there.
It was... So they asked me to do... It was actually when I first started working there. They had a project that somebody else had started, which was a mural in Lee Hall, which is one of the residence halls here on campus. And they wanted to like redo the whole basement and make it more of a like community space where people could study and all kinds of stuff. And the walls were just bland and white. So they wanted a mural. So they sent me this like really complex design that they wanted turned into a digital file. So because they wanted to print like these giant stickers and like stick it on the wall.
Gotcha.
And so I did that for them, and then I sent it to them, and then I never heard back. And so my boss and I reached out to the people who commissioned us to do that, and they were like, yeah, it was too expensive. So then I was tasked with designing something that could be done very cheaply and very easily, and they also wanted it to be a community activity, so having like the residents come out and participate. So what it ended up being was several wolf silhouettes, like giant wolves, along the wall, like sort of standing, howling. And it had a quote that said, like, for the strength of the wolf, it's a pack, and for the strength of the pack, it's the wolf.
Yeah. Right.
And so after submitting that design, they loved it, and they scheduled a like community activity to paint that on the wall. But they needed somebody to outline the design on the wall so that their residents would have something to base it off of.
Right.
So apparently the only one who knew how to draw in the office was me. And so I had to do it. And that was essentially all I did for 2 weeks outside of class, was go sit in Lee Hall basement and draw on the walls and they when they scheduled the community activity before asking me like how much time I needed to draw it on the walls. They were like, you have 10 days to do this. And there were 13 wolves, and each of them was about 9 or 10 feet tall. And so
what? And
then after I finished that, then we had to go back and do all of the lettering for the quote. And so it got down the first wolf took me about 4 or 5 hours to do. And then after that, it got a little bit faster each time. And I think I did them in about 30 minutes by the end of it.
That's pretty crazy.
Yeah, it it was rough.
Did it end up good? Did the community?
I'm pleased with how it turned out. Yeah.
Okay.
I didn't get to participate that much with the actual painting.
I don't think you probably didn't want anything to do with it.
No, I was
You're
done.
like, I'm done. This is not my project
I was
anymore.
okay that they went outside the lines a little bit, but it was I'm okay with that.
Not hurt at all.
Yeah, you're not upset that they just ruined your 2 weeks of hard work.
They didn't ruin it. It looks really good. They have a maintenance office down there in the basement, and the maintenance people would walk by while I was working on it. And
Right.
at first, they were really skeptical with my abilities, and they didn't think I was going to be able to pull it off. But afterwards, they said they were pretty impressed. So I'm happy with how it turned out.
You're getting compliments from people. There you go. You're getting all these graphic design. But alas, you did not choose graphic design as your major. You said after 4 years, I don't want anything to do with graphic design.
Yep.
Instead, I'm going to go into architecture, right? Or some sort of engineering at first?
Originally, I wanted to do aerospace because I had played Kerbal Space Program, and I was like, yes, this is what I want to do. But what I didn't know is in Kerbal Space Program, you don't really have to do all the math and work all of that stuff out.
Oh, man.
And you can just sort of say, this looks like it'll work, and just fly it. And for me, at least, it did work. So I was fine with it. But after taking Calc 1, Calc 2, and physics and computing with MATLAB, I was like, this is not for me. I cannot do this for 4 years.
And that's just like the beginning of like aerospace stuff.
It was like, if I hate it this much at the beginning, I want to do something else. And in the Rocketry Club, we didn't really have to do all of that math because each person sort of did what their strength was. So we had somebody do the math for figuring it out, and then
you just naturally gravitated towards the creative side,
yeah,
I imagine.
Yeah. I mean, I didn't know how to do anything else.
right. Unless you needed someone to test it in Kerbal Space Program.
Yeah. So after spending a year sort of exploring the engineering aspect of NC State, I decided to switch over and do environmental science instead. I had taken an AP environmental science class in high school and really enjoyed it. And I saw a lot of opportunities going forward with environmental science, so I decided to go that approach. And a lot of my credits transferred over too, so it made it pretty easy. And I could still graduate in 4 years. And the only credit that didn't transfer was computing with MATLAB. Which,
that's fine. That's okay. You're okay with that.
It was a rough class, but.
And so you do stuff with environmental science all the time. You're always talking about like different things you're doing with the environment. I know you've told me about how you collect, I believe you're growing acorns. Is that still
was
happening?
a very nerdy project that I did. I thought it would be interesting to do what I call leave a living legacy at NC State or in Raleigh somewhere in the form of a tree. So I thought it would be cool to plant a tree and like come back in like 20 years and say, I planted that. So I originally, at first, I thought that like all sorts of seeds had like a really high like not mortality rate, but like they wouldn't grow, and so I collected about like 50 acorns because that was just the most abundant like sort of seed that I could grow a tree from, just from a tree outside on campus somewhere, and. Through the process of like just figuring out which ones had like bugs in them and stuff, I got it down to about 13 or 14 acorns, and I just like put them in plastic bags with a wet paper towel, and I put some of them in the fridge to like simulate winter, and then some of them just out on my desk just to see.
You're doing like scientific tests on these things
just
for fun. You're just out there.
To see what would happen, and then I just sort of forgot about them, and then 10 days later, I was like, maybe I should look at these and see if anything's happened. And to my surprise, they had all started like growing like roots and stuff. And I was like I was blown away. So I went outside in the middle of the night. That's when I happened to look at them, and just like went out with a spoon and like dug up some dirt out of the ground and stuck them in these little cups and stuff. And actually, I think all 13 but one of them ended up growing into a tree, and so now they're all like little like 6-inch tall oak trees that I have. I planted some of them outside already, and then some of them are still in my room, grown away. Sounds
wow.
Cool.
I think you should also tell everyone about your plan, your like little bit of your evil plan to disrupt some. I don't know if you know what I'm talking about. You were going to plant a specific tree somewhere on campus.
Oh yeah, that was just a joke, but
he says it's a joke.
Yeah, I say it's a joke, but I was talking with my RA about like a senior prank, which included planting a rare tree out in some field so they couldn't cut it down.
What's an rare tree?
Like not necessarily a rare tree, but a protected tree, like the North Carolina tree. I think it's the dogwood wood tree or something. Like if you plant one of those, they can't cut it down, so they have to either move it or leave it there. So we were joking. We thought that would be funny to do.
Just plant them all over campus. They just can't do anything with them.
Yeah, that would be really
That'd
cool.
actually be hilarious.
There was actually an oak tree that on Centennial campus that it was much larger than the ones I have, but
if it was not larger than 6 inches, it would not be a very big oak tree.
It had died, and they just cut it down and left the mound of dirt where it was. I thought it would be funny to just go take one of my little oak trees and put it in there, but I was afraid that if they would just like cut it up and throw it away. So maybe that's where the dogwood would come in. Just put it in there.
You'd have to assume that the people knew that it was a dogwood, though. I feel there have to be some ignorant
You gotta
people
like
who,
plant
like,
a little.
I'll put a little plaque.
card or
I'll
something.
put a plaque
dogwood,
out there.
you cannot cut this down. Look it up, and you
Yeah.
could leave like a little hyperlink where they just touch it. And they like get
But now
directed to
that
site.
I've been on this podcast, they're gonna know it was me. So I have to do some different tree, maybe a giant sequoia or something like that.
Oh, you can't name them. I just thought that was funny when I heard you talking about that. I was like, yeah, that's an idea that like not many people would think of. Like when you say prank, I don't think planting a tree.
Apparently, somebody did that in the middle of the football field. Not here, at a different school. I don't
Really,
remember
they
which
planted
one.
a tree.
In the football field.
That's pretty good.
Yeah, they were not happy about
I
it.
imagine. I don't think nature and sports, like generally, they don't like each other very much.
Yeah.
This is just a shot in the dark. Do you know the difference between environmental science and then environmental engineering?
Not really. No.
Okay.
They're
I didn't know those were I didn't know that environmental engineering was a thing.
No, yeah, it's like it's like a subcategory under civil engineering, which is what I'm doing. And so, I mean, from my understanding, like very, very loose understanding, like it goes into like terraforming and like water grades for like designing structures and things like that. I know like so little about it, but
So you're
I don't know.
so in environmental science, what do you like about like what path, like what is the goal of environmental science for
well, I'm still working on that.
Okay,
but,
right.
I want to do something with renewable energy and sort of creating a greener future for us. I'm actually part of the Climate Reality Project at NC State, and what we're working towards is getting NC State to transition to 100% renewable energy, which is actually a lot more challenging than we thought. It's not just a money issue. It's there's a lot of legal issues with it.
Really?
Because Duke Power they sort of have a legal monopoly, and so it makes it really complicated when it comes to getting like solar energy, which would be the most feasible renewable to get here.
Right.
And so there's no, if we went around the cheaper alternatives to getting solar energy, which is like renting it from a solar company, which is not legal in North Carolina right now because of Duke Energy's monopoly. If we went around it, it would be a lot more expensive because we have to buy the solar panels ourselves. So we're working on sort of changing the law so that we can do that.
And so how many people are part of this club or this?
We probably have maybe 30 or 40 active members. I'm part of a smaller committee that focuses on outreach to other environmental organizations,
Okay.
like the Sierra Club, and I'm drawing a blank right now.
Right, but just other environmental organizations.
Exactly.
That's cool.
And then in that committee, we have maybe like 12 members in that one.
That's awesome.
How does it make you feel when people say global warming is a myth?
I just don't understand how, like, I actually, in first environmental science class here, which was called Climate Change and Sustainability, I sat
That's
next to
ES 200.
Yes, ES 200. I sat next to a guy who was one of those people who completely did not believe in global warming, and he made it very clear to me every class under his breath and sometimes in my ear. And I would often say to him, like, why are you taking this class if you don't believe this is a thing? But what I ended up saying to him and to a lot of people is they don't understand the difference between weather and climate, where weather is short term, what's happening right now, and climate is sort of the long-term trend. And there was actually a congressman who brought, like, it snowed one day in DC, and he brought the snow in a bag, and he was like, see, climate change is not real because it snowed today. It's just not how it works. And
I just thought we were past that point. I thought that at certain, I don't know when, but I figured that, like, I didn't think it was an argument anymore that if climate change was real or not. I thought that we had established that it is real, and that we're moving on to try and prevent it, to try and, like, minimize the damages that we've already done.
That's what I thought too. And apparently
this election came around, and it's like
no.
bulldozing everything. It's like, thanks.
Actually, in 2015, the U.S. and several other countries signed, like, the what's called the Paris Agreement, which is like the biggest step towards fighting climate change. Right. And right now, the U.S. is sort of talking about pulling out of that, which would be really bad because the U.S. is one of the biggest contributors to climate change. And opponents of us, or people who are in favor of us pulling out, are saying, well, China is a big polluter, and so they should deal with it on their own. But China is one of the leading countries in renewable energy, and the U.S. is, like, in the top 3 for biggest contributors to climate change. So
that's
it would be
a dumb
bad
argument
if we pulled out.
It's just such a complicated issue. Like, climate change, it's just so tough to change people's ways. It should be. I mean, it seems like it would be I don't want to speak for everyone, but it would seem to be in everyone's best interest if the world continued to exist with everyone on it.
That's what I think too, but
and it seems like the world did a pretty good job before we were here to keep it self-sustainable, and here we come just wrecking it. I feel like we should, as decent people, if we are decent people as a race, we should try and put it back as much as we can. Although it's impossible to do completely, but at least to the best of our ability, we should try. And some people just, I guess, don't believe that we are even doing anything wrong.
Yeah, it's interesting.
Apparently, we're doing everything all right.
I was looking at a study done by Yale University, and they created this map that shows how many people believe in climate change versus don't. And in North Carolina, it was the majority of people. It was like just a small majority, but the majority of people actually do believe that climate change is real, that it's happening, but only like 40 or 30% believe that it will actually affect them or someone they know. And I did a talk earlier this year in one of my public speaking classes about how it actually affects us now. Like in the Rocketry Club earlier this year, we have to go to the beach to launch our rockets because we have a big field out there that we launch in. And we actually had to take a 2-hour detour because Hurricane Matthew flooded all of that area on the roads on the way to the beach. And with climate change, hurricanes are getting worse and worse. And so you can see the effects of it happening right now, but people just, because it's gradual, people don't really see it happening to them.
So what do you think, what would be a good resource, or where can people look up more stuff if they're maybe they realize they don't know, or like, I guess if they don't know, then they don't know. But like, what are some good resources that you found that you like look out for, or like that you use to keep an eye out?
Well, I would say like the Environmental Protection Agency website or NASA, but come January 20th, or this past January 20th, they were ordered to remove all references to climate change from their websites. So now you have to sort of work a little bit harder and look for either non-government organizations or go into like the scientific papers done by scientists, which are a lot more complicated, a lot harder for a general person to understand.
So you're saying it's just not as accessible
anymore?
It's
become a lot less accessible
under the new administration. It's been
I know recently, I don't know if it's still up there, but the EPA still had an archived version of their website that you could go on on January 19th. Somebody was really smart in doing that. So it still has all of the stuff on there. I don't know if that website's still up. But.
Right. I'm sure you could find it if you look at like EPA archived website or something like that. But I think, do you have something you want to say?
No, this is just tagging on to things like in Antarctica, there's the Antarctica crack is what they're calling it, it's expanding. Like, it's not like a huge amount, but it's like 300 feet a day. And so then like over the course of that continent, a huge chunk is going to pop off, and it's going to be like,
with the poles, all of the ice up there is the largest supply of fresh water on the globe. And so if that melts, then we lose all of that fresh water because it gets contaminated with salt. And then also it adds to the water in the ocean, which can raise sea levels, which is something that happens gradually. So you won't see it. It's not an immediate thing that you will see, but
overnight, but like over the course of 10 years, like,
and so like, you could look at Florida and see over the course of like 50 years, which some people don't really understand. That's in our lifetime. That you could see like the NASA Kennedy Space Center underwater there, and other big cities like New York underwater. And then it also makes storm surge worse for hurricanes, and so the flooding gets worse, and it's just a lot of money that we don't need to waste on it. Like, people are concerned that we're going to spend all this money on climate change and it won't actually be a problem. But if we don't spend the money and it is a problem,
I don't think you understand. We can just build a wall. We're good.
Well, New Orleans tried that with it didn't work.
They need to build a bigger wall. That's what they need to do. Kind of going off that. I have two last things. One, I saw an article. You could look this up. It's about like Canada. Like, it was like Canadians look outside their window to see big iceberg floating by, and it's like an iceberg came down from the North Pole and like saw an iceberg outside their window, and they're like, tourists were like flocking to it and like wondering exactly what it was. I'm not sure exactly the news, but yeah.
Wow.
So that's the picture that I saw. They're just like looked outside their window, and all of a sudden there's this huge iceberg.
It looks like a mini skyscraper type size.
Somebody should tell the Titanic to watch out.
I thought that was interesting. Two, going back to Joseph's public speaking class, I think it was interesting. You were speaking earlier about how you, your friend in elementary school that you had the competition with, that you always wanted to teach the class. Only today, you were telling me right before we got on the show that you actually completed this goal today in college because his final you can just tell them about your final.
So my final for public speaking was a how-to speech. And so I gave a 5-minute speech on how to draw something. And so I did a drawing ahead of time, and during different stages of completion of the drawing, I would make copies of it. And so I could show on the projector, like, each stage of doing the drawing, and show them like how to do each stage.
That's really cool.
So I thought that was just a good little bring it all.
I like that a lot
because he wanted to teach, finally got a chance to do it, and
now my life is complete.
So I think that's going to do it for us. But before we go, can you tell them first of all where to find all your artwork? If you have a website you want to send them to, or if you want to check out your Instagram, Twitter. I know you're active on the retweets. I don't know if you're active super on like the tweeting yourself, but you can send them to your Twitter. This is your time to plug whatever you would like to plug.
All right. So basically, if you just use my username for everything, ASOMR1, that's Awesomer1, you can find my Deviant art, my Instagram, my Twitter, pretty much everything, my YouTube, whatever.
Awesome. Yeah. All right. Yeah, be sure to check that out. And Ben, are you going to close us out with?
I'm going to close us out with a song that I found today on shout out Spotify. I wish you could use a coupon code for us, but they don't sponsor us at the moment. But maybe they will at some point. It's called Painting Grays by Emmett Fenn. I hope you don't give us a copyright strike. And I know it's a pretty relaxing song, so it's not like anything super crazy. But
that's good.
We should just listen to a song at least for like 20 seconds ish. Yeah, and as the song comes to a close, make sure to follow us also on Instagram now at EpochHQ. And on Twitter, and you can check us out on our website. That's www.epochhq.com. And the shows come out every Tuesday at 10 a.m. That'll be it. Yeah. Rate us on iTunes also. Oh, like the video. Everything you want. Yeah. You know, we like to do this outro in pieces, just as I come up with it. No, I'm just kidding. But thank you for coming on, Mr. Joseph.
Yeah. Thanks for having me.
That was really interesting. I like that.
I had a lot of fun.
I didn't, but it's all right.